Namaste. Welcome to the Ilonggayogi podcast. My name is Kate. I am from Iloilo City. I'm the founder of Healing Iloilo, where I teach daily yoga classes, and the founder of Mental Health Iloilo, a community that supports mental health awareness in Iloilo City. I share content on yoga, mindfulness, fitness, mental health, self-care, and healing. Before we get into this episode, I just wanted to let you know that I teach all my classes at Molo Mansion. So if you're interested in taking a class with me, just head over to Healing Iloilo's Facebook page or Instagram page to book a class. Hello, everyone. And again, I'm happy to do another episode today and to share about this topic. It's been brewing with me for the past weeks, I think almost like more than that, probably months. And so I've been definitely excited to just finally have the time to sit down and to do this. And it has taken a lot to make this happen for me. A lot of adjustments in the schedule, figuring out how to make it work so that I could actually just do this, create content that I always have wanted to create or have been planning for a while. And it's just been kind of hard to do that. But thankfully, because of the last few breaks that have happened, like Holy Week break, and then, I had a quick work trip that kind of forced me to not do so much because, backstory, I took a boat to Cebu, and that's the first time that I've done anything like that. And as you know, when you take a boat from Iloilo to Cebu, that's like a 14-hour trip. So I had all 14 hours to myself to really brainstorm and figure things out, kind of reschedule everything, move things around in my calendar to find what is the perfect routine for me so that I don't burn out, but then I also have a bit of time for everything. So basically, it just took a lot for me to finally be here and to do this. And I'm really happy to finally be able to do it. So for this episode, as you know, of course, the title has to grab your attention. If you can't accept this, then you can never heal. And it was inspired by an interaction I've had personally. And through that interaction, I realized how many times this has happened in the past, especially since I do these support group sessions. I kind of lead them. So I get to meet different people, different stories. And when they try to seek help from me, I notice this pattern a lot. And you'll see how, it's the same people who keep coming back, asking for the same kind of support. And and how what their kind of mindset is, basically. I kind of have been able to pick up on their mindset, their perspective about things, and that kind of inspired this episode. So I'll get to that in a little bit, but I just wanted to start off by sharing as well, where I am in my healing journey, because this will definitely focus on personal healing journeys, everyone's healing journey. And you'll hear me talk about that a lot, because to me, right now, where I've been in the past several years of my life, pretty much this chapter of my life, because I like to look at my life kind of divided into 3 parts. Of course, the first would be as a young kid, just kind of enjoying life, really naive and just happy, because of you come into the world with very, very pure intentions, right? So, definitely just blissful, just happy. And then the second chapter, the second part of my life is kind of where I start to experience pain and sadness, but not really understand it and how that has affected my life. And, now I'm in this chapter wherein I'm just healing from that pain, healing from that realization that life isn't pure bliss, that life isn't meant to be lived in a naive kind of carefree way all the time, because we do go through a lot. We go through different things. So I'm at this point of my life where I am healing, and this has been a very long journey. It's been a journey that I've experienced for probably over a decade now, honestly. And so right now, where I am in my healing journey is quite special to me. But at the same time, the reason why I wanted to discuss this topic for this episode today is for those who can relate to that feeling, of battling with your own mental health, especially when you've experienced that in the past, right? And so that kind of still affects you in the present. Or maybe it's for those who are still, battling that right now. And then for those who are also probably afraid of it coming back in the future, and then like losing control again because of their mental health in the future, right? Because that anticipation also brings up so much anxiety, and I've been there. I know what that's like, and that fear has been with me. It has. Right now, it's not that obvious or evident in my life. Like, I don't feel that fear as much as I did in the past. But but I get it. I get that feeling. So this healing journey and this episode, I really hope can resonate with a lot of people that are in their own journeys. Wherever you are in your journey, it'll be able to reach you somehow. And for me, where I am right now, like I mentioned, is very special to me because there have been 2 times in my life where I was prescribed with medication and that I took the medication. The first time I had a really bad experience with it, and I remember just feeling the same way. I've battled with depression at a young age, and I remember, feeling so much pain and sadness, like a very deep pain and sadness already at like the age of 9, 10. And then it was only when I was 16 or 15 in high school, basically, when I finally was diagnosed with clinical depression and then being prescribed medication. And then when I did that, it didn't really make a huge difference. And I just remember I was already taking medication, but I was still feeling this deep sadness, and I had no energy. I didn't feel like I wanted to do anything. Like, I just had zero joy for life. Like, there was no enthusiasm, even at that age, of usually you're in your teens. It's just it's supposed to be like a carefree time where you get to enjoy yourself. That's the time where you get to really like YOLO kind of life. But I didn't feel that. I just felt so much heaviness and sadness and like this deep pain that was just like with me every single day, from the moment I would wake up till the moment I would fall asleep. And I remember even when I was taking those medications, I would still take my lunch during lunch break in high school. I would take my lunch somewhere far, far away from everyone else, like from the canteen. I would look for a spot that was behind the school, in the most private area, or at least in an area where I didn't know anyone or I didn't see anyone that I knew there. And I would just eat my lunch alone. And that's something that I've done a lot. And I just remember, I don't know, I just felt I can feel it right now as I share it, as I talk about it. I can feel it in my chest, that heaviness, that loneliness that I just could not escape. and then just feeling I had so many intense emotions that I just didn't understand, So I had a bad experience with my medication. And I remember that it even caused me to gain weight. So all the more that I got very, very stressed about that. And I think because of that, when I stopped taking the medication, I started to have a very unhealthy relationship with my body and with food, like starving myself, dieting until I was like literally like a stick, so it was a very unhealthy relationship with food and my body. And I just saw myself as like really, ugly and disgusting every single day. And then the second time around that I took medication was, thank God, a much better experience for me. So as you know, I've shared this a lot on this podcast. I was prescribed medication again in 2023, and then by 2024, I stopped taking it. And that time of my life of taking meds really changed everything, and that's why I am where I am now in this journey, because it really shifted everything. It was the first time that I took the medication, and it really, like, all the thoughts that I had just like disappeared. It was silenced, and I was so amazed how that happened, and how like my judgment has been so clouded, and my decision making, and just like who I am, everything that I would do, like it affected my whole entire life and my daily life, because of those thoughts that I just had in my mind about who I was, where I was. And it was really taking a toll on me all this time, and I didn't even know until the time that I took medication, and then all of that stopped. So you won't even realize it until you get to the other side of things and see, like, wow, I was actually dealing with all of that. And that's why it was a challenge. I was struggling all this time because of that. So that's kind of where I have been. It's this life now that I'm living is post medication, and that fear is still there. Like, sometimes I'm still afraid of what could happen next. What if I lose control again? But I think not just the medication, but because I have laid the foundation of just like taking care of my mental well-being for the past decade through yoga, meditation, journaling, all these things, my daily routine, my support system, all of that has built up to where I am now, and has really been my rock. Like, every single day, like I know that my life right now is pretty crazy. It's very, very crazy. It's very overwhelming. There's so much pressure. There's so much stress that I deal with right now. But because of this whole entire journey of everything I've learned, from what I've gained, that is the reason why I'm able to sustain all of it. Like, I'm able to keep myself intact and not completely break under pressure, and still be able to keep going because of that. So that's such a huge factor for me. However, there is one like main piece, like for me, this is the most important part of it, that kind of glued it all together and has kept me together in the past year of my life. And that's because, as you know, the reason why I was medicated the second time around in 2022 was after I had that fallout with my family, right? And because of that moment in my life made me feel like I've lost so much. Like, I've lost so much already. And because of that, like, the stakes got higher for me. The stakes got higher, and I realized that, if I don't help myself, then I literally will have nothing. Like, who's gonna help me? Because at that moment, I realized, like, I'm kind of on my own in this journey. And if I'm not gonna help myself, then I'm just gonna be miserable. Like, nothing's gonna change. Nothing's gonna come out of it. So because of that moment, recognizing that I have to do this for me because that's all I have. That's really all I have. And because of that, that pushed me to completely just change the narrative, change my beliefs, drop that whole side of me and completely let go of it, and finally, like, in a way, kind of regain your power back. Because my depression, because I've dealt with it for half my life, more than it, that has become my comfort zone. It will become your comfort zone when you've dealt with it for such a long time. That sadness, that feeling becomes your safety net, quote unquote, because it's the most familiar feeling you have. It's the most familiar state that you've been in. And so it's going to be really, really hard to climb out of that. And that's the hardest part, like slipping into depression. That's the easiest part. Like, for me, I'm speaking for myself, like my experience, slipping into depression, that is easy for me. That is, if I could do that, because I feel like if I could do that, that means like I don't have a care in the world anymore, so you just kind of let go, goodbye, so it's really easy to slip into depression. And then when you're there for so long, that's a struggle that I experienced in the past, is pulling myself out of that. That's the hardest part, is pulling yourself out of that depression. And there are moments, even where I am now in this journey, there are still moments where I fall back to that, and I'm afraid sometimes, of course that comes up. Like, I'm afraid, especially if I've done too much and then I feel very, very burnt out. I can tell and I can sense in my body and in my mind, it's on like red alert, red alert, that we don't want this to get to a place where I cannot come back again. That's the scary part most of the time. And that's the hard part, because there's so much like disgust in myself when I fall back to depression. There's so much disgust when I try to pull myself out of that. There's so much like shame. It really is, literally the feeling is I feel disgusting in my body. And then the shame, because now I have to do this again. I have to go through this again. And then the struggle of pulling yourself out, that's like intense work. It's so hard to start over again, to kind of help yourself again. It's like really difficult. It's really difficult to deal with that. And so that's kind of where I've been. That's been my experience, time and time again with my own mental health. But because I stepped into this mindset, especially the second time around, being diagnosed and then medication and all that, the second time around made me realize that if I want things to change, and if I want a better life for myself, because again, otherwise I'm hopeless, right? Otherwise I have nothing, if I want that to change, then I have to be ready to let go and drop everything, to completely, like, I've lost everything already. Like, that's kind of how I felt at that time. I lost everything already. What more can I lose now, by deciding to change my life now, which means grieving everyone and everything that was part of my life as being so overcome by my depression, like letting go of that, letting go of all my habits, all my patterns. And that wasn't easy. But because of that moment, because I've already lost so much, I felt like, what else can I lose now? Because I've already lost so much. What else? There's like, I really literally felt numb already, because I've lost it. I've lost everything. I've lost so much in my life that I thought had so much meaning. I've lost a part of myself already during that time. So there's really nothing more to lose and everything to gain. And because of that, that is what drove me and pushed me to finally make that change, to finally start that healing journey. What are those lessons that I have learned? What have I learned from that whole experience, and how has that guided me and supported me today and where I am in my healing journey? So number one, change begins with personal ownership. The moment that I completely took ownership of who I was, because that's kind of the first struggle, is if you see your condition and your illness and your struggles as the enemy. If you see it as a separate entity and an enemy, like this is for me based on my experience, then you'll always feel like you're fighting something, and that alone is very exhausting. So when I started to look at what I was going through, my condition, all these ups and downs that I go through, the darkness in me, when I stepped in and accepted that and admitted to myself that it's time that I make peace with you, and it's time that I accept and acknowledge these patterns that I have, the behaviors that I have, the past that I have, like I accept that. Once I started to accept that part of me and not see it as an enemy, that helped me begin, the process of really, truly healing and recovering. Healing will not start until you finally admit that something needs to shift. And that's period. Like that's that. And that goes not just for mental health, but even for your physical health, even for your relationships. Healing cannot start if you don't even admit or acknowledge or accept the fact that there is something wrong. And there was something wrong, because I knew that this cannot continue for the rest of my life. Again, I've lost so much. Am I going to continue letting my life be this miserable and allow myself to fall back into these ways? So healing cannot start until you admit that something needs to change. And when you admit that, then change begins. Number two, this is probably the most powerful lesson that I've learned in many different ways. The difference between wanting change and being ready for it. That's a huge difference that we do not see sometimes. Many people will say that they want to feel better, and this was the moment, when I had those personal interactions with different people, and how it was like a very repetitive behavior and cycle. And then I noticed this specific pattern in them, because these people, they want to feel better. I mean, that's why they're seeking help, but they're not ready. They're not ready to take on what it actually means to change. Because most people think that change is going to be simple and easy. Most people think change is just going to be a walk in the park. You're just going to, I want to change, and then change will just come. But that's not how it works. So you have to be ready. If you really, really want change, you have to be ready for change. And when you bring in change into your life, there will be discomfort. It will be the most uncomfortable thing that you'll experience. And you have to be ready for that. You have to be ready for the pain, because without that pain, then you're not going to be pushed, right? And that's kind of what happened to me. Without that pain, without that loss that I've experienced, then I wouldn't be where I am now, 100%. And that's the only reason why everything that I went through during that time, it's been so easy for me to to forgive, and accept all of that, because I know deep down inside that because of that experience, that is what pushed me to change the most. You have to be ready to let go of all your old habits. You have to be ready to stop repeating the narrative, that same narrative that you constantly remind yourself. It's almost like watching the same scene, the worst, the most depressing scene in a movie again and again and again and again, and then not stopping that at all. Like just constantly playing that in a loop every single day, 24/7. You will go crazy, right? If that is something that you do, you will. Our first reaction to that is that, my gosh, that's crazy. That's stupid to do that again and again and again. Why would you do that? And yet, when it comes to the same stories that we play out in our mind, the same narratives that we play out in our minds, it's okay. We accept that, but that's not normal, and that's not something we should do. So you have to know the difference between wanting to change and actually being ready for it. You have to be ready for the discomfort, and you have to be ready for the pain, because that is what creates change. Next, resistance to change is natural. Like I mentioned earlier, my depression became my comfort zone. That was the most familiar state for me, because that took up most of my time every single day, feeling of sadness and loneliness and wanting to be isolated and wanting to just sulk. Like that was comfort to me already, because I've experienced that for such a long time, for like half of my life. So of course that was what was familiar. And so stepping out of that is going to be very scary. Stepping out of that it's not going to be easy. It's going to be the unknown, and that's why a lot of people would rather stay stuck in that cycle, because they're so afraid of what that life is outside of that. They're afraid of that, of not being familiar, of the uncertainty. If they were to let go of that, if they were to let go of that sadness, of that constant heaviness that they feel, of going back to the same bad habits, the same unhealthy coping mechanisms. So you have to know that if you are ready for change, it is going to be uncomfortable, and it's going to be painful, and it's going to be intense. It's a lot of work. And of course, naturally, you're going to want to resist that, because your guard's going to be up. You're going to think that you're in danger. So the first initial thing is that your mind and your body wants to protect you. You're going to think you're in danger. And that's part of the whole process. And it's very important that you have to keep going and overcome that. In yoga, they always say that the moment you want to get out of the pose because it's already very, very uncomfortable, you feel like you're going to go crazy, especially in those yin poses, that's the time when the pose begins. So it's not when you get into the pose, it's the moment you want to get out of that pose. That's when you should start. That's when you should stay. That's when the pose and the work begins. So for those who don't practice yoga, there are basically some stretches. Like, I don't know if you're familiar with pigeon pose, but you can also look it up. But basically, this is an example. Pigeon pose is quite a deep hip opener, right? And when you come into that pose, typically in a yin practice, you're going to be, or a gentle practice, you're going to be asked to hold that for more than a minute, maybe 3 minutes. And this doesn't just apply to pigeon pose. It could be any pose, actually, especially again in a yin practice where you're kind of told to hold poses for a very long time, for like a minute to 3 minutes long. And so when you hold that pose, because your body is still, your mind is gonna go crazy. It's gonna go to places it's never been to before, because again, you're trying to distract yourself from kind of the discomfort that you're feeling in a pose, because again, it's a deep stretch. So when we say discomfort, it's not necessarily that you're hurting yourself. It's just that because it's such a deep stretch, of course it's going to be uncomfortable, but that's part of it, because we're trying to create space in the body, especially if you have so much tension. So it's going to be uncomfortable. And so most of the time, you come into a pigeon pose and then you hold it. At first, it's going to be pretty chill. It's going to be pretty easy. Like, wow, this is a really good stretch. And then once you've started, you're going to hit that wall. And that wall, whatever it is, that could be in running as well. If that's something that you can relate to more, it could be in running as well. You hit that wall wherein your body's like, I am done. I am done. And mentally, you're going to want to tell yourself, yeah, I am done. I agree. I want to give up now. But that's when the work starts. It's when you push yourself through that wall, that's when growth begins. And so that's why you're going to resist. Your body is going to resist. Your mind is going to resist. But you got to keep going, because that's part of the process. And when you push through that resistance, that's when growth is going to happen. That's when real change is going to happen. So that's, again, resistance, hitting that wall. That's all part of the process. It's part of the journey. Number 4, letting go of the old you. You have to understand that if you want real change in your life, if you really want to heal, healing will require you to shift your identity. There's going to be this huge shift of who you were versus who you are becoming. And as you shift into that, you will lose so much. You will lose so much. You will lose relationships. You will lose all these habits, all these beliefs that have been tied to that unhealed version of yourself. And you have to accept that. That's part of the whole process. If you cannot, then you're going to be stuck. So letting go of the old you as you step in to who you are becoming. Who you were, including all of the relationships that were part of that, all of the beliefs that were part of that, all of the experiences and habits that are part of that. If you are ready for a change and you want to feel better, then you have to be ready for all of that to be gone. And you have to completely let it go, or else nothing is going to change. Nothing is going to change. Everything that is part of your world right now, especially right now, if you're in that process of preparing for change, wanting change, then you have to be ready to possibly lose all of that. And I think this is where, especially for me in my experience, this is where I really started to understand the meaning of detachment, of being fully detached from life. I think that's something that I've kind of, brought up, in some of my previous episodes, of how I am nobody. I am nothing. All of this is nothing. I have nothing. In a way, I know it sounds kind of very, very depressing and sad, but in a way, what I mean and what I'm trying to say is that, everything that's here in this life is not mine, and one day this will all be gone. All of this, I'll be gone, so I have to accept that there is this sense of detachment from everything in my life right now. And that made things a lot easier for me to keep moving forward. That made things easier for me to move on, to heal, to let go, because of that, or that idea of and the practice of detachment early on, being detached from this lifetime and who I am and what I project into the world. And that made things easier for me to just let go, and it helps me now to become a lot more adaptable. Like, it becomes much easier for me to adapt to change when it's needed, to heal right away, especially if I'm processing a difficult situation or an emotional situation. I'm able to kind of to process it, acknowledge it, accept, and then move forward, because again of this sense of, that this experience was brought about by a pattern that I have, or a part of me that was probably affected by a past experience of mine, so that's why I'm reacting to it this way, and so being able to right away detach from those habits of mine or that pattern of mine makes it much easier to again make that shift and make that change. So you have to be ready to let go of the old you, which includes the entire life that's part of that old you. Next, accountability over blame. If we continue blaming ourselves or choosing to be the victim, you are never, ever gonna heal. Choosing to truly heal means you take accountability for everything. And that's why I think for me, that's why it's so easy to just be able to forgive the people in my life, especially those who might have wronged me, because I know that maybe I feel like I have been wronged, but I'm pretty sure there's another side to it, and I'm sure they also feel like I have wronged them, right? As they always say, there's always two sides to a story. If anything, there's more than that. There's there's their side, my side, and then the truth, right? So that's something that I've always carried with me, and so that's why it's so much easier for me to take responsibility for everything that I've experienced, even for my past trauma, even for my the pain that I've experienced, the struggles, the suffering that I've experienced. It's so much easier for me to take accountability for that, because if you're gonna stay in that space of blaming people, it's not gonna help anyone. I am a child of divorce and a very quite broken family, but also just a pretty basic Filipino family. My mom and my dad divorced when I was 2 years old, so I never really experienced growing up with my parents together or just being in the same household. That has affected me in my relationships, unfortunately. And then, of course, you have a mom who is a very typical breadwinner Filipino mom, balikbayan, working abroad, OFW, So there have been moments where I have been separated from her. So basically just living independently. Again, that's going to affect who I am. And a very busy mom at that, a mother who had to work 2 to 3 jobs. My gosh, just to support me and everyone else. So it's going to be very easy for me, like by default, like as a child of that experience, I could choose to blame them, which I have. I could choose to blame my father for being absent, for not being there, and then that's why I am this and that and that. That's why my life sucks, right? And I could also choose to blame my mother. My mom, she's also been absent, so I've had to fend for myself, yada, yada, yada. I could choose that. But will that get me anywhere? It won't. It never did. It just brought me back to that same cycle of feeling I'm not enough. I'm not worthy enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not loved enough. And because of that, that didn't help me. That didn't help me find peace. And if I continued with that mindset, I wouldn't be where I am now, basically. And so because I finally took accountability and chose not to blame anyone, it's nobody's fault. It's no one's fault. There's no one to blame. Everyone is just figuring it out. That has helped me the most. That helped me not choose to be a victim, to take responsibility. And then that empowered me to finally take the steps to making the change. So accountability over blaming. Next, healing is a daily practice, not a one-time decision. Like I mentioned, I've been in this chapter of my life where I have been healing. And this chapter is not just, 1 month, 2 months in. This has been ongoing for the past decade. This has been going on for more than a decade. So it's a journey. It really is a journey. And until now, I'm still figuring it out. Like I said, sometimes there's still that fear that lingers around. What if in the future, I experience the same depression again, and then it's going to be very hard to pull myself out of that. What do I do then, And so I know that could happen. I know that in the future, things might shift, things might happen that I'm not going to anticipate. I might lose certain things that are going to be very painful and grieving through that and all of that. Like I know that's going to happen. And so because of that, I know that my healing journey is just going to continue on, and it's going to transform, it's going to evolve as things happen, as things come and go, as I get older, as I mature, as life happens, So I know that this healing journey is an everyday practice. And that's what I meant when I said that healing, it takes work. It is intense work. It is work. So people always assume that if they want to change, they want to heal, that it's going to be, finally I'm in bliss, I'm at peace, it's all going to be good. But it's not like that. Healing takes so much work. Before I took medication, it was a huge reason for me to not take meds when I was supposed, because as you know, in 2017, I was diagnosed with bipolar 2. And of course, I was supposed to take medication back then. But, bipolar 2 meds are not fun, from what I've heard and what I've researched. So I think during that time, I really wanted to make it my goal to establish coping mechanisms, daily practices, mindful daily practices that were gonna help me manage my mental health somehow. And when I made that decision, I also, part of that was that I knew that this choice is gonna be the harder choice. This choice is gonna be hell, basically. Because it's not the easy way out. It's the hard way. It's the hard way. It's a hard choice. It's a hard path, because that means I'm going to have to experience fully the ups and the downs as they come. And I have to accept that. I have to accept that that's part of the decision I made. So because of that, it's going to be a daily practice. And through that, I think that's why I'm where I am now, and I've become this, I guess, resilient to a lot of the pressure, the stress that I go through, because I put myself through the ringer. I put myself through that, of dealing with that and having to go through the ups and downs when I didn't have to. I mean, I could have taken meds and then, been done with it, and then that would have made things much more bearable, not easier, but I guess more manageable and bearable in a way, because it does kind of half of the work for you, right? But I chose not to. And I think because of that, that has helped me so much in really taking care of myself and ensuring that I get through the tough times on my own. without, medication all the time, without leaning on that. So it's not a one-time decision. It's choosing that you're going to choose this again and again for the rest of your life. And that's going to be part of your life. We've been dealt these cards, and you got to accept that for the rest of your life, you're going to have to hold yourself through this. You're going to have to help yourself through this. And that's part of it. And as you go through this, as it's a continuous choice. Every day you wake up and you make that choice that today I'm going to choose to take care of myself and heal, and I choose change, right? And so you got to partner that with a lot of patience, a lot of self-compassion, because that would mean your progress is going to be very slow. It's not going to be, again, a quick fix. It's going to take a lot of time, but trust me when I say it's going to be worth it. Because of what I chose years ago, now all of this is like easy peasy, lemon squeezy, because I know that I've been through worse, and then I'm going to go through worse. But because I've gone through that in the past, I know that that is molding me for what's next. That's helping me to get through whatever is next, whatever challenge I have to overcome next. So it's a choice that you make every single day, partnered with so much patience and self-compassion, because your progress, it's going to take a lot of time, and you have to accept that as well. Next, surrounding yourself with support that honors your change. That's number one. That's very important, that you are able to share that you're able to share your journey with others, and that they understand it. They accept that journey, and they accept what it will mean for you, and what you have to go through because of that journey. So having a healthy environment, it really does matter when you're trying to embrace change. So if it's possible, surround yourself with a good support system who again respects where you are in your journey and honors that, and allow you to flourish in that space, in that journey, in that environment, instead of, making you feel bad and making it difficult to move forward. So that's part of it. That's another part that really matters the most for me. I guess I learned to, in a way, because I'm so used to being kind of on my own and dealing with my journey on my own. But it really did help that I had my partner with me by my side, my husband, because he really understood where I was coming from, and the struggle I had. And to me, he is my main support system now. And so whatever it is that I feel, the moment I start to feel anxious, or the moment I would start to feel depressed, I would always let him know that this is what's going on. And we have this way of dealing with it, where he would ask me, what do you need? Do you need a solution, or do you need comfort? Do you just need me to be here? And when that happens, when he asks that, usually I just kind of answer and let him know, I think I just need comfort right now. I don't need advice. I don't need solutions. I just need comfort. And that alone has been really powerful for me and for him, to have that. And so that's my support system. And so I think it's really important that we find that, whether it's with a friend or with your therapist or with anyone else in your life. It doesn't have to be family, because sometimes, especially in a Filipino setting, it's really hard to find support, from family. But if you're lucky enough, maybe you do have that. And also don't take that for granted as well. Really, especially when you know that you can trust them. For one, you have to know how to be very honest and communicate to them what you feel and what you need. what kind of support you need, so that they also know how they can support you, especially if you know that they are someone you can trust and they are very much willing to help you, so that's important as well. So just surround yourself with people that can really help you and support you and honor where you are in your journey. So last two, change often requires grief. Like I mentioned, you have to be ready to lose a part of yourself. If you really, really want to change, you have to be ready to lose a part of yourself. And grief is part of that. You will grieve your old life. You will grieve all your relationships. You're gonna grieve that safety, familiar, the safe feeling of that familiar pain. And so part of healing includes giving yourself the space to feel that loss and to grieve that loss and to still be able to move forward, even with that grief. So change has to come with grief. You got to accept that, and you got to prepare yourself for that, because it's part of the journey and it's not something to be afraid of, because it's going to be a very, I guess in a way, this is what will empower you to move forward. And lastly, healing is not easy. That's something that I've repeated over and over again in this episode. It's not easy and it's not simple. So it's very important that you celebrate those small shifts, those small wins. I think that's something that I've spoiled myself in celebrating those small wins, as you should. That of course it's up to you, but for me that's what I've always done. So I always love to spoil myself, especially when I know that I've accomplished something. For example, in my journey, especially recently, when I know that I've just had so much on my plate, and I've done so much in a week, I give myself a day or two to just not worry about everything. I really let myself soak in the art of doing nothing, for a day or two, and just being at home and just not really thinking about anything else, because I know that I need that. I need that downtime in order for me to just recover, to recuperate, because of all the things that I have to deal with. And I know that if I don't have that, if I don't have a little bit of time to pamper myself with that, through that, then I'm gonna feel really, really burnt out and drained. Another way that I recognize these tiny moments of change is, sharing it through here or through my post online, through content, because I feel like that's my way of what's the term, of kind of I guess of memorializing what those wins are, and then at the same time hopefully inspiring others who may come across the posts or the content that I create, so they also get to learn from that as well. So being able to share these experiences and the growth that I have through podcast episodes like this, or through other content online that I do, that I create, for me that's my way of celebrating those small moments of change, so I can remember it, as I continue on, and it can also possibly, impact someone else. And so these small shifts are actually huge victories as we go on our healing journey, as we go along that healing journey. So I know that was quite a lot, but basically for me, the main point that I just wanted to share with you, is that healing is a choice. If you really are ready to feel better, if you really want to help yourself, you have to be fully ready for what it entails, the work that it entails. Wanting change and completely letting go of this side of you that may feel very dark and heavy and empty and lost and sad. Letting go of that, especially if you've been used to that for years and years and years, means completely cutting yourself off from that version of you. And that means losing a part of you, losing all the relationships that are tied to that part of you, losing all the habits, the daily habits, the beliefs, the belief system that you hold. It would mean really shaking up your entire world, and you have to be ready for that, and how painful it's going to be, how uncomfortable it's going to be. And the moment that you say and you accept that you are ready for that, change will show up. It'll come to you. It will find you, and it's going to happen. And you'll see how worth it all of that was. All that everything that you've put yourself through, it's all going to be so much more worth it. Because for me, at least where I am right now, and seeing how far I have come, I feel like I have gone, 1,000, probably more than 1,000 days of not falling back to my old ways, not thinking about harming myself, not thinking about completely just letting myself go, not thinking about how the world would be better off without me. That hasn't crossed my mind in the past year, so I feel like I'm doing something right, and I've done something right here. And so that's why I really wanted to share that with you, because this wouldn't even have been possible if I didn't decide to make that choice, and if I didn't say that I'm ready to face it, and all that is part of the healing process. So as I end this episode, it's been an hour already. I just want you to remember that you cannot heal what you do not want to face, and you cannot change what you do not want to accept. Healing begins the moment you choose to show up for yourself. So thank you so much for joining me in this episode of the Ilonggayogi podcast. I honor you and your presence here today, and I hope that you can share this episode to your loved ones or to anyone who might really benefit, from this episode. And follow this podcast to stay updated on my next episode. Thank you so much, and until the next one.